Welcome to the Steel Flock podcast, where we talk about all things AFC North, as well as the rest of the league through an AFC North lens. He's Matt. I'm Ryan. Thank you so much for joining us today. In our last episode, we talked about the new coordinators that joined the AFC North. And in today's episode, we're diving into the analytics from personnel to offensive and defensive schemes to game management. What can we pull from the data to give us insight into what to expect in 2026? Stick around to the end to find out. Let's hit it.
All right. So we prepared a lot of data for you to kind of, we've kind of prepped by thinking about who these coaches are, ran through their history as coordinators, as head coaches. But now we want to look at the numbers and see, what we can kind of glean from them about what we might see, of course, next year, but also coming up soon. What do these teams need in free agency in the draft? Because that might change a little bit depending on their tendencies. Looking again at not just the play callers, but in some cases, like a run game coordinator for the Ravens, there's non-play callers that might have some influence too. So we wanted to blend in some stats from a bunch of different teams looking at, okay, what did these guys do last year in their old spots and what that can mean for the AFC North. So, for the Ravens, we've got, of course, Declan Doyle's here, never called plays before. So we're going to look at Chicago, where Ben Johnson called the plays. We're going to look at Atlanta, where Dwayne Ledford's coming in as a run game coordinator and offensive line coach. But Declan Doyle, he spent most of his career learning under Sean Payton. So he kind of probably formed most of his thinking around offense actually under Sean Payton. So we want to look at the Payton Broncos here too in a lot of different cases on offense and see what we can.
For the Steelers, it's a very completely different system coming in. First and foremost, Mike McCarthy was in here, in last season. So what we'll do in this episode is we're going to compare it to the Vikings offense in 2025, being that Brian Angelico, who was their passing game coordinator, is now the new offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
And so for the Browns, obviously their new head coach was the offensive coordinator last year with the Ravens. He's also bringing one of his top assistants, Ryan Switzer, over there to be his OC. So it's pretty much fully, I think, the Ravens' philosophy coming over to Cleveland. And then the Bengals, for better or worse, are running it back again in 2026. So not really any other team we're going to look at, just, what were the league averages and what did they do last year? So, yeah, I think we'll jump into the offensive side of the ball first. Probably what most want to hear. It all starts with the personnel, who's on the field. And I think in the AFC North, we're used to, a tight end, multiple running back type of attack. And that's just kind of, we see that as our heritage, I think a lot of us. But league-wide, the trends just changed, not just last season, but mid last season, to go from under 39% league-wide in weeks 1 through 9 to the average 44.5% in weeks 10 to 18 is a huge explosion. So we're seeing a lot of the most successful teams switch over that to kind of try to combat what a lot of the best defenses are doing, which is to get lighter, play everything nickel and light boxes. And, it worked for the Seahawks, but, how long will that continue? We'll see, because obviously the attempt to kind of solve this already started mid last season based on how the Seahawks were just killing everyone. So we want to jump into the Ravens here. So there's a lot of comps here for the Ravens, and we're going to break this down by just the biggest buckets here, because, there's so much, there's so much minutia we could get into. But okay, how often did they run 11? How much did they run, multiple tight ends? So we're just bunching together, 12 and 13, because there's not, a huge difference in philosophy there. And then multi-running backs. How often did we have multiple backs on the field? We can see here with the Ravens, they are dead last, 30% 11 rate. Compare that to the Bears, which is, they're 23rd, which is not that, they're still obviously below average, but almost 23% more than the Ravens still. So we're going to see some changes there probably. And you can see the big difference between, the Declan Doyle and Ben Johnson Bears. They're very close in multi-tight end rate. They're both some of the top teams running multiple tight ends, but the Ravens love to have a bunch of backs in the backfield. And that is, one of the lowest. They basically didn't run it. 0.3% of plays, they had multiple running backs. So that'll be obviously really interesting with Pat Ricard hitting free agency. Maybe there's not a place for him on the team, or maybe they see him as a tight end, but it's hard to say right now. The Falcons also pretty low rates of 11, very high rates of tight end usage, 45.7%. So if we're looking at these three teams, the last year's Ravens and then the Bears and the Falcons, we're seeing so much continuity, right? All way below average on 11 personnel, all top 6 at lowest in multiple tight end rate. So we're going to see, I think, that kind of modern multiple tight end heavy personnel. And we can see, Ravens ranked 4th in multiple running back rate at 28%. Falcons at 10%, we're still 13th. So, I think it depends. If it's up to Ledford, they probably will be a place for, multiple backs in the backfield. But it really was not at all a part of the Chicago attack. And the Broncos are, a little bit of an outlier, running a lot more 11, not a lot of multiple tight end sets, but still running multiple running backs at a fairly high rate, 17%, which is not high, but well above the 10.8% league average. I really think, we're going to see a tight end centric offense. I think that's probably what most Ravens fans expected. What they didn't expect was the fact that we literally only have one tight end under contract for 2026. So a lot of questions ahead of free agency in the draft. But yeah, Ryan, take us through the Steelers personnel.
Maybe Patrick Ricard can be that fullback / tight end like Hayward is on the Steelers. I mean, essentially, he just comes in to do the tush push. I've always loved the fullback position. I just feel like if that role has always been so great in just clearing the way for running backs that it's too bad that the modern NFL doesn't value the fullback position as much as it used to. All right, so looking at the statistics here, it's no surprise that the Vikings ran a lot of 11 personnel. They had Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, and Jalen Naylor. And so they just had good wide receivers to run that 11 personnel. As compared to the Steelers, who, other than DK Metcalf, you had Calvin Austin, Adam Thielen, Roman Wilson, just not really the most appropriate personnel to run that 11. And just under half was a multi-tight end, that 12-13 personnel. And it was a very common scheme in an Art Smith offense. For the multi-RB rate, seeing the Steelers at 4.5, it doesn't surprise me because, when I watch games, even though Art Smith ran a running back by committee, he usually just had one running back on the field at a time, whether that be Jalen Warren or Kenny Gainwell, but it's not a surprise to see that. And truthfully, I didn't watch enough Vikings games to really observe the multi-running back rate for Minnesota. They had Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler. And so, unfortunately, I can't comment too much on that, but Minnesota had a lot of pass catching backs. And so it is also not a surprise that they would have more than one running back on the field at a time.
Yeah, I think they have CJ Ham. I think that's still a fullback. I'm not sure, but I was really surprised to see how low they were in multi-tight rank, because I think of them, Josh Oliver rehabbed his career with the Ravens, played super well here. I was hoping they'd keep him, but he went over to the Vikings and has done really well there as that super balanced blocking tight end who can also catch a little bit. And to see them all the way down at 22 was pretty surprising. But yeah, I mean, of course, if you've got Jefferson, Addison, freeing up Naylor, maybe you might as well just go out of 11 and see what you can do. So.
Yeah, and one thing too that I thought about while we were looking at all of the statistics here is, in 2025, the offense was probably different than 2024. And my reasoning is in 2025, they had JJ McCarthy. And in 2024, they had Sam Darnold. So I don't know how much different. I imagine it might be a little bit different based off of skill. and preparation and all of that kind of stuff. But at least just kind of my general what I envision the Vikings offensive schemes. Yeah. What I see here definitely aligns to that.
And of course, a common theme with us on this podcast, I think, is going to be just how much these franchises mirror each other. Like, of course, we'd be 31 and 32 in 11 personnel, right? I mean, just no one's shocked by that among our fan bases. So, yeah, I thought that was kind of cool.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, we've kind of run through the Ravens a little bit already, and you can see there's a lot of continuity here already. So they ran a lot more. They ran almost 15% more 11 than the Ravens, even though they're only 5 spots higher in the league rankings. So that just shows you just how far down the Ravens are in 11 personnel usage. But these are, again, the top 2 tight ends and top 2 teams in multi-tight end rate. So both above 50% of plays with more than one tight end on the field. So, we can predict that a lot more. But of course, Njoku is, has already said he's going to be released. So it'd be interesting to see. I don't think that you can do what the Browns are going to want to do with, Harold Fannin, so that'll be interesting. I think the demand for tight ends is going to be really high in free agency. So that'll be interesting to see. Multiple running back rate, kind of surprising, just 3.7%. 19th in the league. The Ravens are up at 28%, so way higher in multi running back rate. And with all of the turnover on offensive line, maybe they could use a fullback to kind of shore up that line, because there's not going to be a bunch of elite guys up there no matter what. Pretty much, I think we can assume for 2026. Again, the scheme is very simpatico with the Ravens, but the personnel, a lot of holes. Any other comments yet on this one, Ryan?
I guess I shouldn't say surprised, but I mean, for the multi tight end rate, I mean, they're practically the exact same. So it's kind of like if you watched our Browns versus Ravens game, which I can't remember the last time I watched one because I have no desire to watch the Browns. Yeah. Maybe one of these days we can add a Browns fan to our podcast so they can kind of stick up for them. We probably don't do them as much justice as we should. But
yeah, I do watch some Browns games because to me, that's the second game of the week after the Ravens is whoever's playing the Steelers, and that happens at least twice a year. So, I'm in the tank for them.
For sure, for sure. And, same with that multi running back rate. Whenever I would watch games or clips, kind of the same with the Steelers, they may have a running back by committee, but on the field at any given time, it's usually just the one running back. So none of these surprise me, but, again, even the Browns running a higher percent of 11 personnel compared to the Ravens, that's not what I would have expected with the Browns, at least.
Yeah. And so again, with the multi running back thing, I mean, it used to be, I think the Ravens could just say, hey, Pat Ricard, you want a couple million? You want a little bit above the vet mini? And be like, okay. Because how many people are going to sign him? I mean, we just tripled the amount of teams that might want to sign him with Todd Monken going out to Cleveland and now Harbaugh out in New York. So, he himself might have a market that he's never actually had before as a player. So he could definitely be on the move, I think, in 2026.
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about the Giants because who did they hire as OC? Was it Nagy?
Yeah.
uh, not gonna worry about the Giants.
Yeah. Oh gosh. All right. So Bengals, I actually thought they'd be a little bit higher in 11, but 65%, ninth in the league, and their league average at multi tight end, just right around league average. So, they've tried to bring in talent there, like a second round pick on Drew Sample. Clearly they've over the years kind of valued that position a little bit, but they also tend to bring in kind of guys like Gesicki who are just absolute zeros in the blocking game and kind of tight ends in name only. So, I think they're a little bit, lighter than that multi tight end ranking, I think would imply. And yeah, multi running back rate, 3%, not a meaningful part of their offenses. I don't think anyone's shocked by that.
No,
So,
just
yeah.
Chase Brown running the ball. I mean, that's it. And even then, it's not until the very end of the season when all the defenses in the league have just kind of worn out that he starts to blow up as compared to, at the start of the season when there was a lot of hype and he doesn't really do that much. But, I overall the offensive line has really struggled for the Bengals for a long time. It's yeah, again, not much of a surprise. And yeah, I agree. I thought they would have had more 11 personnel, but when we would watch games and whatnot, they usually would just have one tight end on the field, whether it was Gasecki, Drew Semple. And it seemed like a lot of those plays also were near the red zone versus kind of just like, middle of the field kind of place. So yeah, looks about right.
Yeah. All right. So now I think we want to jump into the passing game a little bit. So this is from rbsdm.com. So this is sort of an advanced look at pass rate over expected. We can see in the longest bar what the actual sort of expected pass rate is across that down and distance situation, basically league wide. And then the sort of smaller color inside there is what the actual pass rating was. So again, I think pass rate doesn't tell you much. This is going to get you a little bit more granular at when the situation warranted it. What did they do? So obviously with the Ravens, we're seeing just so far below league average in every down and distance situation. So I don't think there's much to glean from this too much. Although I this the second and short, that's considered like the take a shot down. Ravens are even more below average than usual on that, although they are a little bit higher on first and tens. You can quibble with, what efficiencies Monken might have gotten that he was leaving on the table with the Ravens last year. But, this is kind of the baseline that Declan Doyle will be walking into. So to compare to Chicago, obviously we see more green, still a lot of pass rate under expected, but where are they over? They're over on first and 10. They're way over on second and short. So Ben Johnson, he was taking those shots on second and short when he got the opportunity to do it. Still, way below on third and short. And maybe that's because, that they're one of those teams that is looking at the analytics and knows they're going to go for it on fourth anyway. So they're not going to throw on third and short. So I thought it was interesting to compare that one here. But yeah, I was a little bit interested to see what would happen with Pittsburgh here. What are your takeaways from this one?
When I saw this, there's a lot higher passing, than I thought, especially with the second and 8, you would expect there to be a pass. Third and short, yeah, they're gonna try and run it in there. I mean, like if you look at the graph, I mean, basically Pittsburgh kind of did what was expected, like all plays first and 10, third and 3 after pass for the first. I mean, they're pretty much like same, and so as much as I don't want to think this, but I guess it just seems like the Steelers offense was kind of like obvious on what they're going to do. Um, but yeah, honestly, none of these surprised me all that much.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. Yeah, I just wonder how much, what does that look like in the huddle or whatever between Rogers and Arthur Smith, right? I wonder how many arguments they might have had, and Rogers was just like, well, whatever, I'm throwing it, even when
Yeah.
Arthur Smith might have been like, oh,
Well, I'm sure there definitely was a disconnect there. Rodgers is familiar with more of the McCarthy kind of offense versus, Art Smith was a different offense, and so I don't know how much flexibility Rodgers had at the line, to change plays or whatnot. But I don't know, kind of based off of this again, the Steelers' offense did what was kind of expected of them. I don't know how I feel about that. Like I said, I don't know if I'm like that's kind of sad that even the analytics was like, oh, Pittsburgh is probably going to do this, right? And
right,
they ended
right,
up
right,
doing
right,
it.
right.
So I don't know if that just means it was a highly predictable offense, that there wasn't as much scheme and thought, and I don't want to I don't want to say trickery, but it just, as compared to the Bears one, right? Like it was kind of all over the place, and obviously Ben Johnson's offenses are killer, and even the analytics can't always really tell what he's planning to do. So how can you expect the defense, right,
Right.
to really kind of figure it out within seconds? And so, yeah, looking at this, I mean, it makes me, at least compared to the Bears one, it's just like, oh, okay, well, no wonder. No
Yeah.
wonder.
Yeah. But yeah, that is a really good point. I mean, there's so much variance there, right, compared to the Steelers. And yeah, maybe it's just, Rodgers is just so, in line with what he's seen throughout the years in the league that he just kind of goes in rhythm with kind of what what is the league average at this point.
And it could just be conservative play calling too, like
Yeah.
because the offensive line is not elite like it used to be. You just got DK Metcalf, you got Fairmouth and Darnell Washington and Janu Smith, and yeah, it's just kind of vanilla and
Mhm.
conservative. And I don't know if that's because Art Smith didn't trust Rodgers. I don't really know, and I don't think we'll ever know. But again, it's just it just looks like Pittsburgh has a very predictable offense.
Yeah. So, going over to Minnesota, I think you were smart to highlight, okay, where's the variance? And there isn't a lot of variance in the Minnesota chart either, right? But obviously, there may have been some training wheels, like you're saying. So, yeah, do you have any thoughts on what this might mean for the Steelers next year?
I think it'll depend who's the quarterback, but I think if it's Rodgers versus, or if it's Will Howard, or if they pick up someone in free agency, I think it'll really depend. But if it's Rodgers or Will Howard, it'll probably be more on the conservative side, which I understand. For a non-elite quarterback, you want to keep things simple and you want to put the ball in the least amount of risk. But of course, the issue with that is, defenses will probably be able to figure you out.
Mm. Yeah.
And whether Angelico can make halftime adjustments to, address that, to be seen, right? We'll find out as he becomes the full-time OC. And same with McCarthy. What kind of in-game adjustments are they going to make? Because I mean, even when he was with Dallas and Green Bay, there were arguments that his play calling was too conservative, like too safe, too risk averse. And I would understand that if the quarterback was not that good or unproven. But if they're able to bring somebody special into free agency, that game plan might change. A more mobile quarterback, for example. I mean, I'm not wanting Kyler to come in. I'm not wanting Tua to come in. Not that the Steelers would be willing to spend that kind of money anyway. But of course, there's talk about Malik Willis. I feel like if Malik Willis comes, it might look a little bit different. But I was the sample size is so small, and he's leaving the system that he was successful in. And so just because of his success with the Packers and that system, it doesn't mean that coming into a new system, he'll find that same success. So, I'm unsure about Willis, but, I'm sure that if Pittsburgh were to bring him on, they probably could be a little more creative, a little more flashy, like a Ben Johnson offense. But yeah, so I think it truly will depend on who will be the quarterback for next
Right.
year.
And yeah, I mean, Mike McCarthy is a quarterback whisperer, but I mean, who's the most mobile QB he's coached? It's not a long list, right? So it'll be interesting because yeah, most of the quarterbacks who are available right now are those kind of uncut gems that can run. Anthony Richardson, Kyler, Malik Willis. We'll see, but yeah,
Yeah.
I did like to see this here though. After a rush for a first, they're well above league average. So it seems like they're trying to go for the kill shot after they maybe get you in heavier personnel on defense on the field. So kind of interesting, but yeah, otherwise, you know, not a lot of variance. And I'm just curious, how much are teams now involving their analytics departments with the position coaches? Because if, like you're saying, if the linebackers are coaching their guys on their defense on these keys based on these frequencies, like, yeah, you're going to have a long day if you're just right in line with the frequency chart on down and distance. Like, that's not good. So, yeah,
And I think more teams are really starting to realize the benefit of analytics. I mean, the Los Angeles Rams, for example, they're known to just have like a gigantic analytics department, because it matters, right? It
hmm
helps with game plan. And the Steelers, I think last I heard, have like two people on staff for analytics, right? And
really, okay, that's
it's
really
it's an
interesting.
incredibly, I mean, I'm exaggerating, but it's compared to the Rams, the Steelers analytics team is like small, super small. And so when you have two people trying to go through all of the things that we're going through tonight plus more, I can understand why things might fall through the cracks,
hmm
but I think more and more teams are finding value in the analytics. I mean, even during games too, right? The commentators, if it's like fourth and whatever, or they're on the 20-yard line, they'll always comment like, oh, the analytics say go, so like even for the commentators that are calling games, even they mention analytics too. So it's definitely worthwhile to invest in understanding and implementing within your schemes for sure.
Right, and it comes down to culture too. Like the Rams, like McVay has such a strong culture there. It's not like, okay, we're a nerdy and soft team who loves analytics. Like they're just a team that empowers the analytics and empowers the players, and the players, you know, play really hard. Like they just have wide receivers that block like tight ends, and that's part of what makes their offense go. Is just they build that toughness into the culture along with respecting the analytics and understanding that's a meaningful part of the game. So, yeah, that's part of why McVay just his teams win a lot of games, I think.
Just seems more collaborative.
Yeah. So yeah, I did want to bring this in because we don't have a lot of the sites now. A lot of people have been talking about how the analytics world is so much poorer in the NFL versus baseball, whereas it's hard to get even data beyond the previous year that's in a lot of detail. So this I thought was an interesting chart to look at Dallas from 2020 to 2024. Also looking again at their pass rate over expected by situation. Uh, what do you see, Ryan? What are your thoughts?
I feel like I'm seeing the same slide three times because because same with this too. Have like a little bit of variance here and there, but like for the most part, I mean, look at how many like 0% there are. It's and I mean I said that not that long ago that an argument about McCarthy's play calling is it's predictable and it's not overly creative, and you can see right here that that's really must not be far from the truth, unfortunately.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah, it's shucks, I'm trying not to. I'm still trying to be cautiously optimistic, because I'm a fan. I always want the team to do well. It's just see, this is what happens when you dive into analytics, though, right? It's like it from the 30,000-foot view, you have like, oh, Mike McCarthy, Super Bowl champion, been around the league. He's the offensive guy. He's the quarterback whisperer. You have Angelico, who was part of the high flying Vikings offense, and things like that. So just off of name brand alone, it's like, oh, okay, like something could really come out of it. And then you look into the analytics and you're like, uh, well,
Yeah. Ugh,
I,
oof, yeah. But yeah, I think that's the danger of being in this league too long is that you just sort of like absorb what the median, wisdom is on these situations, and that's your second nature. And it takes more each year to deviate from that in your own sort of personal inclination. So, but yeah, really fascinating to see what's going to happen, because obviously he hasn't played, AFC North defenses for his whole career. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens there. So yeah, Cleveland, like we talked about, you could probably guess from the other slides what's going on here in Cleveland. Way below average in almost every situation, and they're just going to have to probably protect whatever quarterback is there next year. So I don't really see much changing. If anything, with Munkin's influence, they're going to get even less pass heavy. So yeah, not a lot to see here, I don't think.
And that's hard, man. Like try to go a full season just trying to run it as much as possible. I mean, without a dominant elite offensive line, it's just not going to work. And you know,
Exactly.
AFC North
Hmm.
defenses, we live in the trenches, and so, and if I'm not mistaken, Cleveland has to retool their entire offensive line, right? And so you're bringing in five individuals who potentially might have never played a single snap together ever, or even with each other at all. And so the expectation that you're gonna bring in this brand new fresh offensive line and expect it to run it down teams' throats, it's a very aggressive plan.
Yeah, and Monken's trademark, obviously it's partly Lamar, but is this deep passing game that's paired with a heavy run game. And the season that the offensive line fell apart, the whole offense fell apart. So doesn't bode well for what he's going to be able to do in Cleveland with almost certainly a worse set of O linemen. So could be a long year for sure.
I wonder who's going to start even, is it going to be
Yeah.
Shador? Are they going to just like what's going to happen with Deshaun Watson? I mean, regardless, they're going to be at a disadvantage with the retooled offensive line, but it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I mean, Deshaun could make it ugly if he's healthy and he does want to play. That could be a huge PR showdown with Monken if that's not what he wants to do. That could, yeah, get your popcorn, I think, for next year, because it, as much as we might think Watson doesn't want to play, he probably has a huge ego also, and is probably just going to be around that building all the time if he's healthy and wanting to play. So, um, yeah, a lot of questions there
I
next
mean,
year.
he just needs to get his routine massages in, and I'm sure he'll be okay.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe they'll just subsidize that to keep him out of the building. Terrible. Yeah,
Sorry,
and that's the whole thing
I
is
couldn't help myself.
no. Yeah, they I would just feel bad that the Ravens, they feel took the franchise away from Cleveland. And yeah, I understand how they feel some way about that. That all of the guilt just washed away, seeing how quickly they embraced Deshaun with absolutely no regard for any any ethics or anything. So yeah, that was kind of actually not, I want to say fun, but healing experience for me in terms of the guilt of the Ravens franchise origins. So yeah, yeah, but yeah, moving on to Cincinnati. So interesting here. Obviously, a lot of green, which I think we all expected, but I think the analytics probably do say to run it on third and short, and they're way below average on third and short. So a little bit of wisdom there. And you see huge above average after they get that first down. So I guess in the rare case where they feel like they've gotten, I guess I'm thinking from the Bengals perspective, it's so rare that they can get heavier personnel on defense that they can tee off of. So, getting that first down, going no huddle, and then throwing it on the heavy personnel is maybe one of their cheat codes for Joe Burrow.
Assuming he's playing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, more O-line questions there in Cincinnati as well.
But I wonder how much of these stats are, impacted by Joe Flacco playing last year too.
Yeah, I mean, Flacco loves to sling it around the yard too, though. So
Yeah.
that is a good question, though. Yeah, and yeah, where will Flacco be next year? Is another
He's
question.
gonna make the
There,
full round. He's gonna join the Steelers as the QB3.
yeah, no, I
And
mean, it really makes a lot of sense, honestly.
yeah,
So I could see it happening for sure.
yeah. Especially like too if Rodgers does end up retiring or leaving in some way, Flacco could be that cheap veteran that can just be on the sideline to take a nap, but but be there nonetheless, and that would be hilarious if that ended up being the case. That slut, the AFC North slut.
Yeah. Slut or mercenary. I'm sure he'd prefer that branding, but
Of
yeah, he
course.
can't get enough. He can't get enough AFC North football. He has to
Uh,
come back every year,
yep.
no matter what he has to do.
Mercenary
Uh,
is much better. Yeah, you're right. You're right.
uh, well, I am wearing my Pro Bowl QB jersey here with the old school Flacco. So yeah,
Flacco. Delaware, right? He was Delaware.
yeah, Delaware Blue
Delaware.
Hen. Yep,
You know,
the pride of.
when I first saw his, I guess his tape on one of the ESPN shows, at first I thought it was Michigan because like the helmets look very, very similar. And then they said Delaware. I'm like, Delaware? Jeez. Yeah.
I
And I
know. I
mean,
mean,
look, Super Bowl champions. So
it
what can I
is. It
have?
is kind of a Cinderella story, honestly. It would be super cool if that were to happen again. I guess Trey Lance was the closest thing that we've got, and that did not go very well. So I'm not sure when we're going to see that again. But it was really cool to see it happen for Flacco for sure. So yeah, we went over kind of in detail that pass rate over expected. I do think that is probably the number one foundation for just thinking about passing overall is how much there is and when do they do it, right? But we're going to take another look at just an overall pass rate over expected rather than that granular look. Air yards per attempt. So how aggressive are they in the air? And then I think a really interesting under center percentage. This is under center for all plays, so run and pass. But how often are they under center? So for the Ravens, obviously we've talked about it. Number 32 in pass rate over expected. Not shocking at all. I thought they'd be a little bit more aggressive. 8.1 air yards per attempt. That's 11th in the league. The other really shocking one to me is that they're only under center 36% of the time. So really just about league average, basically 13th in the league. So I think we're at a place where, obviously we had the shotgun heyday in the 2010s, but, we're now in a situation where, obviously, what's old is new again, and under center is kind of the rage right now. And if we look right down at the Bears, you can see that they're still well below pass rate expected at, -4%, 22nd in the league, but they're even more aggressive. So 8.6 air yards per attempt, that's 6th in the league. And then the really shocking thing to me, under center, they're at 48.3%, 5th in the league. So when you think about a second-year quarterback in Caleb Williams, I think, the sort of dogma is like, well, give these young QBs what they saw in college. And obviously college is just, I mean, it's a shotgun league in college at nights. You can count on, two hands how a lot of even the top day one and day two QB prospects have taken under center, how many snaps. But Caleb Williams, they just put him under center at the 5th highest rate in the league, which I think is just a really impressive approach for Ben Johnson to do that, make it work, and give him a quick education on doing that. So I would really expect that to be one of the key metrics for the Ravens offense next year, is going under center more often. But here's one of the biggest conflicts, I think. One of the biggest narratives, I think, will be how much influence does our run game coordinator have? Because if you look, obviously Falcons are right, they have Bijan, right? So they're way run heavy, but they're under center at the 29th rate in the league versus 5th for the Bears. So these, it's going to be, I'm sure there's ways to do it, but at first glance, this looks like a pretty contentious marriage, I think, between bringing in Ledford to coordinate this run game that is not at all like what either the Ravens or Bears really ran. And now with the whole idea now that you're marrying run and pass, and they should be very, very sewn together tightly and look the same. Like, I'm very curious how this is going to play out next season for the Ravens. Broncos obviously a lot different, much more pass heavy, even with Bo Nix, and a little bit. They're much less aggressive. 7.3 air yards per attempt. That's 23rd in the league. So, they're having Bo Nix be more of that point guard, and they're under center at just a league average rate. So I don't think a whole lot of takeaways. I think the Ben Johnson influence is probably going to be a lot stronger than Sean Payton in terms of the pass game for the Ravens. So yeah, any thoughts on that, Ryan? No, there's a lot.
We're going to see it in the next slide with the Steelers, but when I see the Falcons under center at 20.3, and on the next slide, we'll see that the Steelers as well were lower under center. And the first thing that came to mind was quarterback. Like, so Rodgers is old. And so having to snap the ball, run backwards to either hand the ball off, fake it, that over the course of a full season just might be too much strain on his body. And with the Falcons, quarterback was either Michael Penix or Kirk Cousins. And so Penix is young, but he's all bust up, right? His knees are all messed up, and Cousins is up there in age as well. And so that was the first thing I thought of is, at least from the shotgun, you're kind of already standing up. You have the opportunity to survey, the field a little bit cleaner from the shotgun. But I don't know, just as long as I've watched football, the best teams that, can run the ball, run it from under center, and I mean, I'm just always been a fan of the downhill runner, and that's the way to do it is from under center, I formation, And I guess just watching the Steelers, Aaron Rodgers handing the ball off to Jalen Warren or Kenny Gainwell from the shotgun, there's just I just for me personally, this is just a personal thing. I just feel like there's just not enough momentum and force just like to burst through that line, and we'll see it in the later slides about the running game, outside zone versus inside zone. But it's going to be interesting because, and we'll go over it then, but the inside zone was actually pretty high for the Steelers. So there's just like the analytics just bring so many different perspectives that, like in this case, will the Bears and Falcons systems, will they marry? Okay. Or will they conflict? So for me, again, I know that was kind of a long-winded answer, but just that was what, first came to mind was, well, who is the quarterback for the teams that were either under center more or under center less?
Right. No, but that is such a good point, about just the physical nature of the position. Like, yeah, and that's the context that's missing in a lot of these analytics. So, yeah, I know that Ben Roethlisberger, I remember there being stories about how he would just refuse to do like a turn your back play action. Like he just didn't want to do that. And yeah, the difference between just seeing Lamar, you know, turn his back under center, play action, he's confident whatever's there when he turns around, he's going to be able to make something happen, get around it, whatever is there when he sees that field. Whereas, Rodgers is not going to want to turn his back and not know right after the snap what these guys are doing, especially with all the post snap rotations happening now. But yeah, the physical nature of it, true. It that wear and tear of just, yeah, I had not really thought that much about that. So that is really interesting.
Maybe because we're getting old and our bodies are starting to hurt
Yeah.
a little bit more. Just looking backwards when you're reversing your car out the driveway.
Yeah.
But yeah, over here, 6 yards per attempt, that's the worst in the league. And I think that's a combination of subpar O-line play calling itself, again, only having DK Metcalf where, you're looking to throw a quick slant and then for him to somehow magically break a tackle and bust it open for like a 70-yard touchdown. But just watching, they didn't throw the ball down the field. It was very short routes just to get the ball out quick. And, I it's disappointing for sure. And then, yeah, I mean, I was just commenting on the last slide about, they're only under center a third of the time. And I mean, that's just not diverse enough to make things happen. And then again, it just goes back to um, um, play calling that you can predict, and so I'm sure it'll be different. I mean, obviously, look, you have for the Vikings last year, they had JJ McCarthy, 45% of the time under center. So, I'm as much as I want that number to go up again, I think it'll depend on who the quarterback is.
Yeah, I was shocked at that too. So you have two of the smartest offensive minds in the league, Kevin O'Connell and Ben Johnson, kind of these quarterback whisperers, both taking second year QBs and putting them under center at almost 50% or more of the time, which I don't think going into the season, I think most people would have thought that there's no way that that would be possible. They would just, oh yeah, you ran shotgun in college. Let's give you an easy transition, shotgun everything. No, they put them to school under center. So going back to the Browns again, I don't think we're seeing a lot of similarities here. Run heavy and run heavier, both both around a third of the time under center. Also, so whether that's because of the run concepts or QBs that they're using, a little bit surprising to me for sure to see the Ravens at that low under center rating. Yeah, anything else here on the Browns? Yeah, just to run through the numbers real quick. 6.8 air yards per attempt, 28th in the league. I think, with given the O-line, the just different faces they had under center throwing it, it's not really that surprising. And they're 19th in under center rate at 33%. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can't say anything because 6.8 is better than 6 than the Steelers. And, I keep going back to wear and tear on the quarterback. And I wonder what the 2024 numbers were like for Lamar under center. Because, right, he was injured a lot last year too. So I'm wondering if, that also impacted how much he was under center versus out of the shotgun.
Right. That'd be good to look up for future episode. Yeah. So yeah, those are the Browns. Bengals here again. These are the two teams that they're just pretty much exactly what you would think, right? Fifth in pass rate over expected. 21st in air yards per attempt, with obviously questions about Joe Burrow's arm strength, and then just all shotgun. 18.4% under center rate. So
4%.
31st in the league. So, which is
There's
just
still
crazy.
somebody worse. There's still somebody worse than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. But yeah, you guys just have to think that as a defender, it just simplifies things so much to know that you're only going to see shotgun. And you can do
Yeah.
all your other keys off of that. So yeah,
Yeah.
really.
Not going to be able to run much of a play action
Yeah.
out of
So
that.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, the way that I think about it's just so funny to see all of the discussion every year about the McVay tree and oh yeah, Zach Taylor, McVay. It's like he's running like if McVay's offense is the new standard, it's the new Windows. Like Zach Taylor is running like the Windows 7 version. And, McVay is way past that. He's running 13 personnel a lot now. And McVay is running just whatever he learned under McVay back in before he got hired by the Bengals. He hasn't picked up anything else since then. No new wrinkles. He's running the Windows 7 unpatched, like critical security vulnerabilities are threatening your system. You need to upgrade immediately. And he just has not every year. It's just the same thing. So,
And
yeah,
that's why it's still such a surprise that he was the lone survivor. Like,
yeah.
he's
I
still
mean,
there. I don't know if that says more about team ownership or what, but yeah, I mean, honestly, he's just lucky he has Jamar Chase and T. Higgins because I mean, let's just say if he had DK Metcalf and the wide receivers that Pittsburgh has, like it would be even worse than this. So,
yeah.
I mean, I think it's that talent is compensating for the play calling, but obviously it's still not enough.
Yeah, and I think Mike Brown or whoever is the owner was just like, wait, so if I fire him, I still have to pay him. Let's just keep him on here. Let's give him another year. You know.
Yeah.
uh, all right. So since we covered the pass game in depth, we wanted to flip over to the run game. So this infographic here, it just kind of gives us a little intro into these topics here, because there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen here on the Ravens side, as we talked about. You know, we'll kind of preview our discussion here. If you look at the outside zone, it's a huge change versus what the Ravens are used to. And at the same time, the Broncos ran quite a bit more man and gap concepts, and that, again, like we talked about, that's a little bit, when Declan Dole started in New Orleans, his foundation was in mapping out all the run game concepts for them and working with the offensive line and tight ends. So, it's a little bit, I think, up in the air what kind of run scheme that they're going to bring to Baltimore. And we can see, on the bottom left here, um, you know, the huge outside zone tendency for the Falcons, inside zone, and then man and gap. The Ravens are running those quite a bit, and more than the other two sort of comparisons in the Falcons and Bears. But yeah, a little preview here. What do you see on the top right there? I was a little surprised to see how the Steelers compared to the Vikings in their run scheme.
For me, what I always kind of just think on is the offensive line. I can't necessarily say gap man is better than zone or vice versa, but I do feel like the type of blocking that you call is 100% dependent on the offensive line. The man gap is if you got these very physical, athletic offensive line to just clear things out. And then for the zone, it's again, I think it's just more conservative. And the Steelers' offensive line hasn't been elite like how it used to, so I can see more of a conservative approach in terms of blocking. So it'll be big on the offensive line coach to get this sorted out for sure and elevate the line again.
Yeah, and you can see with the Browns, they had a pretty heavy tendency towards man and gap concepts, and the rest of the Ravens are pretty balanced. And I think they're going to have to be pretty balanced in Cleveland, just because they're almost certainly not going to have the horses to really do a lot of damage. Just hat on a hat. So yeah, so just looking a little bit more detail again at the Ravens run scheme stats. We're seeing a lot of similarity here in certain aspects between the Ravens, Falcons, and Bears. Ravens, ninth in outside zone. Falcons, number one in outside zone. And the Bears are fourth. So all three inside the top 10, right? So that looks like, okay, we're on the same page. But you look at the actual rates, and this was shocking to me. The Falcons they're not just number one, they're number one by a huge country mile over the number two team in outside zone. They're like almost double the next team in outside zone rate. So it's not just that they're number one. The Bears are just 3 spots lower in the league rankings and ran it 20% less as a concept. So,
Helps when you have Bijan Robinson. I mean, he's
yeah,
so athletic that I mean, he's not a gigantic guy, but he's like fast, he's shifty, he's athletic. He's gonna make you miss, and so, you know, run it to the outside so he can get around, the defense versus like right up the gut. I thought the Ravens would have a higher percentage actually of that, of just like running it up the gut with someone like Derrick Henry. But
mhm,
a lot of the highlight plays that Derrick Henry runs is on the outside where
mhm.
he'll get past the first guy, he'll stiff arm the second guy, and then run it in for a touchdown. So I mean it makes sense, but I guess just with someone like Derrick Henry, the size that he is, at least I'm probably just like living too much in the past where it's just like running up the gut. This run scheme looks very like cohesive and that it'll work.
Yeah. But so yeah, I mean, if you think though, again, about Falcons at 58% outside zone, number one in the league, and the Bears coming in, as we saw in the previous slide, one of the top under center teams in the league. So, how, how are they going to run these different run concepts out of these different, under center versus shotgun? Obviously you're thinking if you're outside zone, you've got to be in shotgun to do it. But yeah, the Ravens have done wide zone, outside zone, out of shotgun. I've seen it, multiple times that I can think of. But those stick out in my mind. But I don't know how often they ran it. So whether are they going to have to be in shotgun more to keep this outside zone scheme going? Are they going to? Because I think that's where a lot of these tendencies sort of broke the Ravens in a lot of ways last year where, okay, are we going to go under center? Are we going to have Derrick Henry? Are we going to bring in Keaton Mitchell as the change of pace back? Okay, we can't have Derrick Henry on third down. So what does that do to our menu? So I think marrying up those different concepts and under center versus shotgun is I think the big question to me for the Ravens next year. And yeah, so just jumping over to inside zone, not a lot there, right? So Ravens are 19th in the league. Falcons were 30th in the league last year. Bears 25th in the league. And in man and gap concepts, Ravens ran it at 32% of the time, 22nd in the league. Falcons ran it 20.5% man and gap type schemes, last in the league. Not surprising given how far ahead they were in outside zone. But the Bears, 27th in the league in man and gap. So it'd be interesting to see how those marry up together. 28.4% man and gap, which is again not much different than the Ravens 32.7%. So, but different obviously than the Falcons. So the Broncos are the outlier here. I think again, I wouldn't be surprised if Sean, looking at this, I wasn't sure before we did this exercise and did this research, but looking at this, it does seem to me like pretty likely that the Sean Payton influence is going to be less than I expected. You can see that Sean Payton is kind of old school, right? He just doesn't run a lot of outside zone, doesn't run a lot of inside zone, 26th and 28th in the league, but he's 10th in the league, 41% man and gap, which is an outlier against league average of around 35, 36. So, yeah. Do you have any more thoughts on what this might mean for the Ravens, right?
Oh no, no. I mean, I think we covered a lot here, and we still have a lot to go. So
Yeah, true.
let's
Yeah.
so
Yeah. Let's
let's
jump over to the Steelers. Yeah.
yeah. So with the Steelers too, I mean, they were between the Steelers and Vikings of last year. It was very comparable for outside zone percentage. I mean, basically exactly the same, which is why they're ranked 12 and 13. And it was the inside zone actually that I was surprised yet happy to see. And I guess like when I thought about it more, it made sense because if you look at the Steelers offensive line, their center and two guards are probably the strength of the line versus the tackles. And so that's why in my mind I can see why if the strength of your O line is the center and the guards that you're going to run the inside zone a good amount at least enough to be ranked number 4. And again, going back to just the quality of the offensive line as a whole, as an entire unit, I think that's why they ended up doing more zone blocking than man gap versus the Vikings, who I think just rankings wise has a better total offensive line units. And of course that's just Angelico's scheme is more of the man gap. So, I think that if the offensive line can elevate this year, I can definitely see them doing more man gap. In my simple mind, the reason why I like man gap more too is not only the physical aspect of it, but the point is to create a lane for the running back. While like the zone, it's more on the running back to find the crease, which I think if you are not an elite running back, you may have trouble figuring that out versus, right, if you have a clear lane, you're like, okay, that's the way I got to go. And, so I think for Jalen Warren, for example, like I think he would do better with that man gap blocking scheme because I mean he's not a big guy, but from what I've read and heard, like he's really strong though, and so like if he can just squeeze in through that lane created by the offensive line, I think that will be good for his play style because yeah he's fast, but he's not like shifty, kind of like a Bijan Robinson, at least from what I've watched. And so I just think not only for him, but in general, because in my mind, if I see a go sign, like that's the way I'm gonna go versus like, I have four different ways that I could possibly go, like which one should I go to? So, I think that's more of a personal thing, but I just it'll depend again on how well the offensive line plays.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah, and it is about yeah, if you're a running back and you either can't read the gaps or, if you don't have a lot of chemistry with your O-line, that's going to impact, or it should probably, if you're a play caller, impact how you think about how you're gonna game plan against the run or for the run. So yeah, yeah. So for the Browns, not too surprising. I think they're somewhat close to league average in a lot of ways. 24th in outside zone, 14th in inside zone, but 7th in man and gap, as you mentioned, almost 42%. So quite a bit above league average. And yeah, is that going to be something sustainable with whoever they have in there next year? I don't know. I think it could get ugly. So yeah. And Bengals, a little bit surprising, right? We think of them as not very physical team, but they don't run a lot of outside zone. I guess they have Orlando Brown Jr., who's not very athletic, so that might have impacted that. So they're 25th in outside zone, second in inside zone, and right around league average in man plus gap. So really, they're an inside zone heavy team. And I guess if you just, it seems like that's sort of like the baseline. I think for a lot of teams, if your guys aren't great athletes and are also not the biggest earth movers, we'll run inside zone. Hopefully a lane opens up, and the running back finds it. So yeah, and I don't think not too much to really take home from the Bengals here. Yeah, I think we'll run through this one pretty quickly because you're just sort of looking at, okay, what are the sort of hallmarks of a modern offense to see sort of how up to date these teams are. So we're looking at motion rate and play action rate, and it's amazing how much of a trend this is. I mean, league wide, we're looking at almost 54%. So over half of plays are using motion now league wide. The Ravens are right about league average in motion, which surprised me, right? I feel like I see Zay Flowers, I see all these different guys in motion a lot on the Ravens, but it's just a testament to how heavy that's become a trend league wide. They're no longer any sort of trendsetters in that area. So they're 17th. Bears are 6th in motion at 60.6%. Not surprising that Ben Johnson is on the cutting edge of sort of these efficiency elements in the league. And, if you're looking at sort of Doyle's other dad here in Sean Payton, he's 31st in motion. So kind of surprising. You would kind of think they'd be kind of putting Bo Nix through, these motions to help him see, his zone versus man coverage, whatever, but I guess not. I think maybe the top 3 most shocking stat for me, though, moving over to play action, Ravens are 26th in the league in play action at 13.6%, with Lamar and Derrick Henry, who I think on paper, I mean, this might be the scariest play action threat the league has ever seen. And yet they're 26th in rate on that. And I think, again, the magic with play action is you can use it a lot. Like if you use it a lot, they'll just have to respect it even more. And particularly if you have, runners who can just always make something out of very little, like Lamar and Derrick Henry, there doesn't seem like that much downside to it, but they're 26th in the league. And, people call play action like the corner 3. I mean, obviously it's different now in basketball, but the corner 3, just the easiest efficiency element booster for your offense for the NFL. And again, the Bears are number 2 in play action rate at almost 20%. So they're again trying to give Caleb Williams these layups, these easier situations for him, so that when he does air it out like he wants to, he's going to have a much easier terrain to throw it into if they're expecting the run. Broncos, to Peyton's credit, we're 7th in the league at 17.4%. So yeah, this was eye-opening for me when thinking about, I'm generally a big Monken defender, but I was just totally puzzled by this by that statistic.
And of course, it's and we can move on to the Steelers in a bit, but I think a big part of that too is the Bears played under center way more than
Mm,
the Ravens did, so
right.
I guess it makes sense to see that. And then yeah, for the Steelers, half of the time, basically, Art Smith had some kind of motion going on. He did run the two tight end package a lot, so those guys will do a quick little motion, and same thing coming out of the shotgun so much. Is no surprise that the play action rate is 27th in the league. So yeah, I mean, not really much to say about this other than yeah, I think just the play calling out of the shotgun versus, under center definitely impacted this. And, I've never played quarterback, so I don't know how to read a defense. But I wonder when I know doing motions and stuff is supposed to help the quarterback read the defense. But I wonder if by having motions, it then may become too overwhelming for like a young quarterback. I don't watch enough college football to really see how much, motions and pre-snap things that they do in college. But, if it's not that much, you come into the NFL with not that much experience. You just so happen to be in an environment that you just don't really learn as well, which of course for JJ McCarthy, it's really surprising since all the quarterbacks in Minnesota do well, but he's kind of just like not getting it. So, I was wondering if, like based on the quarterback's IQ and experience, like even though motion is supposed to help you, I wonder if like if there's too much going on, you kind of like trip up over yourself. Yeah, the Vikings run way more play action, so I'm hopeful to see more under center, but again, I think it'll depend on who the quarterback is.
Yeah, and we'll touch on this more on the disguised coverages section, but yeah, I mean, I almost wonder if yeah, like you're saying, if you have a QB who doesn't read defenses very well, it can almost be more dangerous starting particularly last year to give them that little bit that they think that they know and then they act on it. Where the number one trend in the league is, like the Seahawks are doing, the Seahawks want you to go in motion so they can show you, oh, I'm in man or whatever. And then they post snap, rotate to zone. They're counting on you identifying them wrong and then flipping your gear key after snap. Yeah, maybe maybe that's part of what Kevin O'Connell was thinking, too there. So yeah, the Browns here run around league average, 19th in motion rate, 24th in play action rate. Yeah, again, not doing a lot of favors for their quarterbacks there. Ravens, like we talked about, you know, league average in motion, way below average in play action. So, you know, not a lot positive, I think, here to look for if you're a Browns fan, unfortunately. And, just like we've kind of expected with the Bengals, they are under shotgun constantly. So that's going to make it a little bit more difficult to run play action. They're 32nd in the league in play action at 11.2%. So, and they're only 22nd in motion. It's tough to make a living there in Cincinnati. It's pretty much all on Joe Burrow to just make it happen, and Jamar Chase, before and after the catch. We're coming close to kind of wrapping up the offensive discussion here. So we're kind of look. I think one of the most underrated things I think about when you're getting a new head coach is, what kind of game management decisions are they gonna to do? You might like some, culture guy who's gonna motivate the locker room, but if he's like a dinosaur when it comes to these sort of key high leverage game management situations, that's not great, right? So this is looking at, based on the rbsdm.com model, the fourth down model, how often did teams go for it when they should have according to the model? So, if we're going to start at the top here, we're seeing that, the Ravens are way down here, and, the Super Bowl winning Seahawks also not doing great on this, Steelers right around the same here. So, kind of interesting to see, that there's just not really, I think, too much to glean from this. That most of these guys are going to be right around league average in terms of fourth down decision making based on what we've seen so far. Again, Declan Doyle's never, and Jesse Minter, they've never had that, full autonomy to make these decisions. So, I guess we'll see what happens on that front. Do you have any thoughts on that, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised. The Steelers on third down were not very good. And so I can understand why they would want to be conservative on fourth down as well. And then same with the Vikings too, right? JJ McCarthy, and when he was hurt, what was his name, Brosmer or whoever that backup is,
For one
like
game, yeah, terrible.
I I would be conservative as well on fourth down. I mean, granted, Brian Flores has a great defense over in Minnesota. I mean, still, it might just be safer to either take the 3 points or punt it away and then give the defense way more field to work with. So, like, I thought Seattle would definitely be higher than where they're at, but yeah, otherwise, at least with the Steelers, Bengals, Vikings. I'm not really surprised with that. I thought the Bears would be a little bit higher too, but
Right. That is a shocker. Seeing how
yeah,
he's like Ben Johnson's Bears are like number one in every, or top five in every sort of efficiency category. But yeah. And again, this is not taking into account, like you're saying, this is a universal sort of like metric, right? It's not taking into account what your team's individual success rate on fourth down is. And one thing that's driven me nuts in the Monken era is that the Ravens have been not very good on fourth down. When again, just like with the play action, you would think this is one of the most dangerous sort of short yardage teams of all time, potentially with Lamar and Derrick Henry. And yet they basically are below average on fourth down, and a lot of times just pull Lamar and have Mark Andrews do the touch push. So, not really inspiring there. And that's, I'm hoping, an area that Doyle can improve on. But yeah. So yeah, this is a different fourth down metric. This is just overall. How often did you go for it? Ravens are 18th. Were 18th last year. Bears were 20th. Broncos all the way down at 30. It's not a clear cut. It's not as clear cut, I think, of a situation where we're all of the best offensive minds are right at the top. 2-point go for it rate. Ravens were 26th in the league. Harbaugh, I think, he started off really gung ho with the analytics, going for two a lot, and then I think he just maybe couldn't weather the criticism of when we didn't make it, and he just got more and more conservative. So it's not surprising for me to see that there. Bears were 10th in 2-point go for it rating. Broncos 9th. So I think we can expect more aggression on that area from the Ravens. And this is sort of a tough one here. Time of possession, this is dictated by so many other factors, but, I think every Ravens fan will tell you that was the Achilles heel of this team in 2025. They were 25th in time of possession. Bears were 9th. Broncos were 6th. So those, Peyton, Ben Johnson, they understand how important it is to keep your offense on the field, keep your defense fresh, all of that stuff, and how to
control
go
the
about
clock. Yeah.
Yeah.
Achilles heel, I'd rather have 26 than 30 for time of possession. And, I think 2025 time of possession for the Vikings, I would want to see what it was in 2024 when Darnold was there versus McCarthy. I bet you the number is actually quite different. Fourth down, go for it. It's actually very comparable between the two. 2-point go for it rate. I mean, it was probably just easier to take the PAT for the Steelers at least. So, and I don't think, if I remember correctly, the Steelers were in that many close games where going for two would have really made all the difference in the world. So I think I'm not surprised to see a low percentage 2-point go for it rate.
Yeah. I mean, they were in some good ones with the Ravens that didn't work out well. So, maybe the refs had something to do with it, but that's another topic.
Oh, well, Tyler Loop missing a field goal is not a 2-point issue.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true. Yeah.
Yeah.
So looking at the Browns here, we already kind of covered the Ravens. They're not going for a fourth down a lot, 25th in the league. They are going for two a lot, 8th in the league, actually. A little surprising, but maybe just because, again, they're probably losing a lot of games, so they're just going for two a lot. time of possession, you know, 23rd, but, obviously both of our teams are looking up at that. So, maybe they're doing something right there in Cleveland. And the Bengals, to wrap it up here, 27th in fourth down. I don't think that I would imagine they're not the best short yardage team, just given who they have on offense. League average 15th in 2-point go for it rate. League average 16th in time of possession. So, Zach Taylor is just sort of, run of the mill like he
Yeah.
usually is. So, yeah.
Yeah. Blah, just vanilla.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, the talent is compensating for the play calling.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's all we have to wrap up the offensive side. Obviously this is a whole other side of the ball, but yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, and that's it for today's episode. I know in the beginning I talked about covering defense as well. There's just so much that you can pull from analytics that we're just going to have to make a whole nother episode just for the defensive side of the ball. So, we hope today's content was informative. I mean, I learned a lot preparing for it. And if you did too, please like and subscribe, drop a comment if anything was eye opening for you, like how it was for Matt and myself. But thanks again for watching. He's Matt and I'm Ryan, and we'll see you in the next one. Thanks.